Hello there, welcome back to Marcelian&Flame. I hope you're hungry because Blizzard have cooked with the new Frost DK rework. Well, the second new Frost DK rework, because there was one last week that had to have a video today, but we had to like reshoot this last minute. And there's a lot of stuff that's going on that you're going to absolutely love or absolutely hate. For one thing, Breath of Sindragosa is not gone. It is upgraded, it's better, it's kind of like a different ability, but you'll still have to press it. Starting off, first of all, with Glacial Advance becoming baseline. Probably the most obvious thing that you will see in your spellbook if you have actually no talents selected whatsoever. And speaking of things that are dead or no longer in the talent tree, Cleaving Strikes has changed as well, where now Frost Scythe will deal 20% increased damage during Remorseless Winter, and your Obliteration, or Obliterate rather, will just not cleave in Death and Decay anymore, kind of making Death and Decay obviously pointless, and you still have the talent Death's Echo where you will have 2 charges of a pointless talent, so it's likely that the version that you're seeing about Frost DK right now is not fully fleshed out, and we're gonna keep you up to date with everything that happens as we do. Probably the biggest thing that happened with Frost DK and DK in general is that you lost Abomination Limb, period, and is now an unholy button, and we'll talk about that in a few days when our unholy rework is coming out. However, you do have the old anti-magic zone back that gives you 15% magic damage reduction to anybody in for 6 seconds with a 4-minute cooldown that can be reduced to 3 minutes and have an 8-second duration with assimilation. Very, very, very strong ability to provide to your group, especially in raids. But it was so strong before in the past where it turned into what we have right now, and now it's turning into what was before in the past, so I have no idea what the fuck is going on. Moving on to the hero tiles before we actually dive into the meat of Frost Death Knight. For Deathbringer, your Exterminate right now will no longer have a chance to proc Reaper's Mark on a target, but will have a 100% chance of giving you a Killing Machine proc, which is great. You're gonna have a lot of those, and we'll see why that's good. Ends with Rider of the Apocalypse to adapt to the fact that your Obliterate doesn't cleave anymore. Your Frost Scythe instead will trigger Trollbane's Icy Fury chains, so you don't have to tap target individual targets anymore, which is not something that happens with Deathbringer with Exterminate, because you still need Obliterate to proc Exterminate, even if you are in AoE and you're probably not pressing Obliterate almost at all, or at least that's the intended design. So let's talk about this intended design, shall we? I will not start with Frost Scythe because that is also an important part, but I will start with the bottom of the talent tree and work our way up because that will make a lot more sense as to what has changed. Let's get the elephant in the room out of the way. It's gonna be a while because it's an elephant. Breath of Sindragosa has changed. It's still a 2-minute cooldown that shoots a frost breath shadow frost damage out on your targets, and you have to maintain it for a short while, but it's different this time. It is an empowered ability, and based off of the levels that you empower it to, it will have a slightly different effect. What you're probably going to be most happy about is the first level of empowerment, which deals a lot of upfront damage to all of the enemies and lasts for a maximum of 8 seconds because it will still drain your runic power each second, and you can still drop it faster than those 8 seconds, but you cannot extend it past. So you don't have to worry about, oh my god, I have to keep it up, keep it up, keep it up, keep it up. Even if I move, it's all over. The thing is, with it only lasting 8 seconds, it's gonna be gone by the time you even notice it. You just have to probably have maximum runic power once you press it, and then just do a few Obliterates or Frost Scythes during it, and that's about it. By the time your Reaper's Mark even gives you Exterminates, maybe it's probably already done if you play Deathbringer. The added bonus of this is that it will shave off 75 seconds off of its cooldown, turning it into a 45-second cooldown ability that matches Pillar of Frost and Deathbringer uptime. So Frost Death Knight will turn into a 45-second cooldown class. Yay, welcome to the lines of Ret and Arcane Mage and all of those specs that are so good. Frost DK is now a member of the Cool Kids Club. The second charge is probably the least interesting one at the moment and the most confusing one because it deals a little bit less upfront damage. It lasts for 15 seconds, great, but it only shaves 45 seconds off of its cooldown, turning it into a minute and 15 that doesn't match anything at all. Why? This is just strange. I have no idea what the usage of this would be. I'm curious to see if the community comes up with anything interesting. And the third one retains its 2-minute cooldown. It will do the least amount of upfront damage, but it can last up to 30 seconds. And functionally, mathematically, this is the most damage that this ability will ever do for you, unless they change how it's tuned, how it's scaled. Because per cast, obviously, this does the most. It lasts 30 seconds. It will have a 25% uptime, because every 2 minutes, a quarter of that you can have Breath of Sindragosa, while with every other charge you have less uptime on it and less damage also. So this would be the best one, but 2 minutes again doesn't really match with a 45-second cooldown of Pillar Frost and Reaper's Mark. So we'll see if this actually becomes a thing. Also, a capstone that will probably not be played with Breath of Sindragosa is Frostbane, that replaces Shatter Frost, where now each foe struck with Glacial Advance has a chance to transform your next Frost Strike into Frostbane. The chance is increased with the number of Razor Ice stacks on the target. And now Frostbane starts a Frozen Onslaught that strikes twice, unleashing the chilling essence of winter, dealing a little bit of quite a little bit of frost damage to all enemies caught in its wake, and the frost damage is reduced based on the number of enemies you hit down to a minimum of 40% of its original damage, and it will pop all of the Razor Ice that Shattering Blade rather does so well in giving you damage of. But you don't have to tap target anymore. That's the intent of this. The mechanic is still the same. Build Razor Ice on a lot of targets and then just pop all of them for a lot of AoE damage, or at least decent amount of AoE damage, without having to tap target individual targets, which is great. But because you're going to be using so much of your Frost Strike or Glacial Advance, you're probably not going to play it too much with Breath of Sindragosa, or maybe you are, because Breath now only lasts for 8 seconds, so you still have time to do all of the other stuff. And to work towards with the new Frostbane and all of this consumption of Glacial Advance and Frost Strike, we have a few talents that we need to address. All the way close to the top, we have 2 new talents with 2 points each. Runic Overflow, that increases Frost Strike and Glacial Advance damage by 20%, and that's with the 2 points in. And Runic Command, that increases maximum runic power by 20 and Rune Regeneration by 15% to funnel those resources more. And together with these 2 talents, one that's changed, one that's new, Icy Onslaught makes Frost Strike and Glacial Advance now cause your next Frost Strike and Glacial Advance to deal 15% increased damage and cost 5 more runic power. This will keep stacking until you proc Rune Empowerment to generate your runes back. So you'll still consume that runic power, and it's going to become a valuable resource now that gives you more and more damage. And Frigid of the Executioner has been changed to accommodate this, where now Runic Empowerment has a 25% chance to refund 1 additional rune. Resource economy, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to be doing damage. And since we're on this part of the talent tree, I might as well point out the fact that Howling Blast is now a giga big ability. You have a few new talents that will affect it. First of all, Everfrost, that used to be a conduit back in Shadowlands that affected Remorseless Winter to deal more damage based off of the enemy it hits, which it still does, and it stacks all the way up to 10. But Rime Empowered Howling Blast will deal 50% increased damage to secondary targets, as normally Rime does less damage to every other target except your main, so you'll do more AoE damage. Also, a new talent, North Winds. Howling Blast now hits an additional target with maximum effectiveness, so it will cleave on 2 targets for its maximum damage, and then the rest for the rest. But also, Rime increases Howling Blast damage done by an additional 75%. That's a lot when you think that Icebreaker, the 2.0 leading into Breath of Sindragosa, will also give your empowered Rimes or Empower Howling Blast by Rimes 60% increased damage to your primary target. Stack all of this together and it's gonna really do quite a little bit of damage. Frostwhelp aids, did I just say aids? Frostwhelp Aid has changed into Frozen Dominion, where Pillar of Frost now summons a Remorseless Winter that lasts 4 seconds, and each enemy Remorseless Winter damages grants you the mastery bonus that Frostwhelp Aid used to give you, all the way up to 40% extra mastery. It's just now tied into Remorseless Winter, and you don't have to manually use that button on Remorseless Winter once you go into Pillar of Frost. It remains to be seen how this functions, and since we're here as well, Frostworm's Fury is now only 1 point to get the benefit of what it used to do with its, upgrading talent, where it's now 1.5 minute cooldown, does all of its damage, and also stuns and slows enemies for those 10 seconds. not having you to waste 2 points to get it, which is great. Before we go to the rest of the talents at the top, I do need to talk about Obliteration and its new capstone. First of all, Obliteration, just for this to make sense, it does what it used to do before, but now additionally during Pillar of Frost, if you pop Empower Rune Weapon, it will cause your next Obliterate or Frost Scythe to cost no runes. And you will be doing that because the new Empowered Rune Weapon is different. It's now a 30-second cooldown with 2 charges that burst the target for a lot, or the targets in front of you for a lot of Shadow Frost damage, generates 40 runic power, and that can definitely work with Breath of Sindragosa, for instance, if you're lacking that runic power to keep it up, and also give you Killing Machine, or 1 stack of it as well. So obviously if you pop it during Pillar of Frost, it will give you a Killing Machine that will essentially be free to use in case you're being stuck on resources, like sometimes that can happen during Pillar of Frost. And now that we've mentioned this, let's talk about the new capstone called Killing Streak, where now Obliterate and Frost Scythe consume all Killing Machine procs to deal 25% increased critical strike damage and grant 2% haste for 8 seconds for each stack consumed. This is a buff that can stack, but it will not refresh, so each individual stack will expire on its own. It has its own internal cooldown. You will just be getting a lot of Killing Machines, especially with Empower Rune Weapon, and you consume more of them at once, so you get a haste buff as well and do more damage, so you don't feel like you have to pinball, whack-a-mole those procs during Pillar of Frost. Kind of like a new gameplay right now that I'm very excited to test out. And to make sure that we're covering all the grounds, there's a new talent that empowers Empower Rune Weapon, ironically. Frostbound Will. Consuming Rime reduces the cooldown of Empower Rune Weapon by 6 seconds. So you will cast Empower Rune Weapon quite a lot. And with all of the Rime talents that we just went over, now you can see the synergy and why you will actually start to care about all of your procs and all of your resources, and not just Killing Machine if you play Obliteration or Runic Power if you play Breath of Sindragosa. Everything is important right now. You don't have dead aspects of your rotation. And just to clarify this as well, a new baseline upgrade to Might of the Frozen Waste, your passive as a Frost Death Knight, makes it so that when you wear your two-hander, your Frost Scythe does 30% more damage as well, giving two-hander Frost Death Knight way more power than we had on live. Moving upwards from the Killing Streak part of the talent tree, we have Cryogenic Chamber that moved from the other side of the talent tree. And now when Howling Blast consumes Rime, 15% of the damage it deals is gathered into the next cast of Remorseless Winter, up to 20 times. Need I remind you that Howling Blast, and with Rime essentially, does way more damage than ever before. There's a new talent in Howling Blades where Rime empowered Howling Blasts unleash 2 Icy Blades that deal almost insignificant frost damage, but have a 15% chance to grant you a Killing Machine proc. Arctic Assault has been moved up, and also here at the top of the talent tree we have Frost Reaper, or middle of the talent tree rather, a new talent that makes Obliterate deal 10% increased damage and has a chance to tether the souls of its target and a nearby enemy to yours. And when you use Frost Strike, you sever those tethers to deal quite a lot of Shadow Frost damage to both foes. Together with North Winds, it seems like Frost actually has some power on 2 target cleave scenarios, which is something unheard of for Frost DK ever before. And of course, to top it all off, with the change to Frost Scythe, where it all now makes sense because it comes full circle, it's now your AoE version of Obliterate. It has no cooldown, consumes the same amount of runes, does a little bit less crit damage. It only does up to 3 times the normal crit damage as before, on top of the other scaling talents that it has. But it will be the way to consume all of your Killing Machines in AoE and potentially to just generate runic power as well. This is all a lot of crazy new changes to Frost Death Knight because we're looking at the second version of the rework, and it's likely going to have new changes that we will do our best to update you as soon as they happen. And it's going to be a good patch for Frost Death Knight so far, and we talked about it in this video how it's going to be a good patch for everybody because Season 3, particularly the Mythic Plus version, is looking to be one of the best, if not the best seasons of all time. I think we say that a lot.